Welcome to Whippet.net. My name's Brian and this is Kevin.
Hello.
This video is our programming core concepts. So one of the things we want to do with these videos is to step you through a proper process of learning development. And this is the beginning of really getting into the concepts of development. So we want to teach you the core components of what it means to develop before we start walking into languages. And once we walk into languages, we'll start building on that knowledge that we have, which is all based on this foundational video, later with higher level languages and just illustrating the differences. So this is, if you're new to programming, this is a great video. If you've been programming for a while, this is also a good video for you to move through to solidify your foundational concepts of development.
The first concept that we're going to talk about is a very fundamental concept, and that is syntax. It's something that can very easily be overlooked.
In every language, like English and Spanish and French, you have a different dictionary. So you have an English dictionary, a French dictionary, a Spanish dictionary. Each of these dictionaries is kind of like a syntax.
Oh, it is a syntax.
So when you speak Spanish, you have an O at the end of the word to present a masculine form, and you say this before that.
And an A for the feminine form.
Right, and in English you do something else. So there's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of words that mean certain things in a language, and programming languages are no different. This is referred to as the syntax. Once you start getting into development, to switch to another language is basically to familiarize yourself with the new syntax. So a lot of times somebody who speaks French will have a pretty easy transition moving to Italian. Everybody has a tough time switching into English. So once you have the core concepts, the syntax is really what will move you from language to language. So this is effectively a set of rules that combine symbols and formatting to define the legal structure of a computer program.
Now, legal structure is a very important term to understand. When coming up with this definition, we wanted to make sure that we said this in a way that fit what syntax is and how syntax applies to programming. A legal structure of a program is basically this program will run only if it's like this.
Right, if it follows these rules.
Right.
If these rules are broken, the program cannot execute properly.
Exactly, because if you're learning a language, let's say you spoke, I don't know, Vietnamese, and then you come to speak Spanish, for example, you can say a sentence in Spanish, not having that not as your native language, and I can, if I'm a native Spanish speaker, I can maybe not hear a word or two that you've muffed, but understand what you meant.
Right.
Computers, you don't have that advantage.
Absolutely.
So it has to be literal. You can say part of a sentence, but the second that you muff it, the computer, I don't know what you're saying.
Right.
I'm done.
And it cooks out.
It'll either crash or it won't even allow you to compile the program at all.
But the next core concept is the idea of a variable. So you've probably been exposed to variables in basic algebra. So in basic algebra, you say y is equal to x plus 3. So it's the idea that x is a placeholder for some value, and when you assign a value to x, y becomes something else. A variable is used to store a value in memory. So in computers, that storage location, opposed to your memory or on the paper, is in computer's memory, and that is accessible by the program that you write. And the programs follow logic and math operations closely, very similar to how you use it in mathematics, you use it in programming languages.
And there's also a couple of small things to know about variables other than the fact of what it basically is, and that is what a scope of a variable. Most languages, variables are only available within the section that it's defined and within the scope in which it is defined. So you can kind of look at it as a hierarchy.
This leads us to expressions. So an expression is a way to allow the variables to interact with each other. So you can say x is going to store the result of 1 plus 2, or x equals 1 plus 2. You wouldn't say 1 plus 2 equals x.
You can't. Right.
So the expression is also the rules on how you express, but it's also the way that you express it. You can also have a variable which is stored as the result of whatever another variable is, and a number. So y is stored as the result of whatever x is minus 1.
And x is defined, in this example, x is defined above it. So in this example, like we were talking about scope just a moment ago, that equation can't exist unless x is already defined.
Correct. So x has to be stored from 1 plus 2, or else when you go to store y is equal to x minus 1, x won't have a value.
Exactly.
Because you can't assume that a variable is going to start out as being 0, or that it's even a number.
Right, exactly. Because in some languages are very loose on that type of thing.
Right.
So there's also other things like operations, and a very classic operation that you can do with comparison or expressions, I should say, are concatenation. And for those of you that don't know, concatenating is simply just taking one item and just sticking it up against another one.
Right. Most commonly is found in strings, which are words or sentences or just a sequence of characters.
So in this example here, we have a variable called st equals hello, period, space. And in this fake language that we're using a plus symbol. How are plus space plus you. So the result of this, st will actually equal an entire sentence. Hello, how are you?
Also, you can have a conditional operation. For example, you're comparing two things, or you're seeing if something's greater than or less than something else. So in this last case, we have a variable, and we're calling it isTrue. IsTrue can either be true or false.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, isTrue is the result of is x equal to 2. X is equal to 3. 3 is not 2. So therefore, isTrue is set to false.
Exactly.
So that's the basic overview of expressions.
Now, every language has its own way of declaring variables. This is just kind of a general overview. You know, like variables are declared differently within Visual Basic and C and Perl. They're all declared different. They all also store variables differently, and they're used kind of differently. But as a basic fundamental understanding of variables and expressions, this kind of gives you an overview of that.
At least a starting point.
Yeah.